Since Candace Owens came back online with her new brand and podcast a couple of weeks ago, she's wasted no time in making her anti-Israel, anti-Jewish positions known far and wide. From hosting people on her podcast who tout outrageous lies and blood libels to promoting the idea herself that the Jewish people claim some kind of Jewish supremacy, it's clear that she's very anti-Israel. The question is, does this make her an anti-Semite? To be clear, anti-Semitism equals Jew hatred, and anti-Zionism also is the same thing as anti-Semitism because by definition, Zionism is the idea that the Jewish people should be able to live and thrive in their historic homeland. If you don't believe the Jewish people have a right to their homeland, that makes you an anti-Semite. In today's video, we're going to take a deep dive into the position that's becoming increasingly popular among so-called conservative Americans. They claim they're simply asking questions, or that they're America first, or that they love the Jewish people and are pro-Israel. Deep down, however, this rhetoric is leading us down an all too familiar road, one that the Jewish people have seen for thousands of years. We'll get into all of that on today's episode. I'm Luke Hilton, and this is the Israel Guys. Welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of anti-Israel propaganda and Jew hatred, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Go ahead and hit subscribe or follow if you're listening on whatever platform you're watching or listening on. And if there's still time to win the free Israel Guys merch package, all you got to do is sign up for our email newsletter, link in the description below. We're picking the winner at the end of the month of June, coming up very soon. So after being fired or parting ways, whatever happened at the Daily Wire, Candace Owens has come back attempting to be stronger than ever before, obviously capitalizing on the attention she received over parting ways with the Daily Wire. And out of the first 11 podcast episodes on her new show, Candace, her new brand, at least 3 of them have a very heavy theme about Israel. I suspect she talks about Israel and a lot more than just 3, but I haven't listened to them all. I have listened to several of the ones that are about Israel, however, and I've found some very concerning things. Now, she claims that she's obviously obsessed with Israel and the Jewish people, claiming that she's not anti-Semitic, that she is, I don't know if she actually claims she's pro-Israel because she probably doesn't, but she claims that she loves the Jewish people. She claims that she's simply asking questions about why is it okay for Israel to defend themselves? Why is it okay for, and also claiming that anyone who is okay with Palestinian kids dying are monsters, and why it's not okay for Israel to rescue hostages in Gaza from Hamas if it means that more innocent civilians die. She also dances around other topics like, is AIPAC, the Jewish organization in America, responsible for the assassination of U.S. president? She also has referenced multiple times now the idea of this like Jewish supremacy, that the Jewish people believe that they're a superior race. These things are just awful lies, and some of them dancing on the edge of blood libels. And she's had people on her show who also propagate blood libels, and she just sits there and nods along to them. So the question is her rhetoric and the rhetoric of other people like her, she's kind of just the poster child at this point for the so-called conservative anti-Israel camp in America. Is it dangerous? Have you ever wondered how many words fill the pages of the Bible? Well, the answer is a staggering 304,901. What if you could grasp the essence of the entire Hebrew Bible with just 75 words? The book, 75 Hebrew Words You Need to Understand the Bible, is a transformative exploration that simplifies the profound wisdom of the scriptures into the most pivotal Hebrew words. This beautifully crafted coffee table-sized book reveals a deep dive into each word, revealing connections, historical context, and the secrets that are only accessible through the original Hebrew language. Imagine uncovering the true meanings and nuances of the scriptures with just 75 words. Each entry includes translated verses to illustrate the word in full biblical context. Whether you're a seasoned theologian or a curious newcomer, this book enhances your understanding and deepens your faith. As it says in Psalm 119:105, "Your word is a lamp for my feet, a light unto my path." This book illuminates your spiritual journey, making it perfect for personal reflection or as an engaging discussion starter. Don't miss this opportunity to enrich your spiritual journey. Visit the link below to purchase your copy of 75 Hebrew Words and connect with the Bible in a way you never thought possible. Unlock the full spectrum of biblical wisdom today by purchasing your copy of 75 Hebrew Words You Need to Understand the Bible. Link in the description below. videos are going viral on social media right now of a pogrom against Jews in California. That's what it is, exactly, a pogrom. And yet Candace Owens claims that Jews in America are not in danger at all because, you know, we're obviously seeing anti-Semitism levels like we have not seen since the Holocaust. And yes, Jews in America are in danger, but she says, no, why are they claiming that they're in danger? Why are they claiming that, you know, anti-Semitism is a problem? They're not in danger in America, and yet Jews are getting beaten in the streets of Los Angeles as we speak. Question is she ignorant? Is she anti-Semitic? And does it matter? So let's dive in. So two recent podcasts from Candace Owens that I want to focus on. We'll start with the more recent one. It's called The Great Debate, Israel versus Palestine, Candace episode 10. And she has on two Jewish comedians, Ami Kozak and Dave Smith. Ami Kozak, she's had on before. He's from the more conservative pro-Israel side. Dave Smith, more of the liberal, I would say anti-Israel viewpoint, pro-Palestinian viewpoint. Obviously, Candace is also anti-Israel, so it kind of was a 2-against-1 debate. I will say kudos to Candace for hosting two people from different sides of the aisle, and she did a fairly decent job of letting them both talk, even if it was 2-on-1 in this particular conversation. So let's start off with playing this video clip from the conversation.
And Ami, what would you say is a practical solution? Do you follow Bibi Netanyahu's perspective that until we get every last hostage, we can just keep blowing everything up?
Now, obviously, this is deep into the conversation, and I would encourage you guys, yes, we're clipping short clips from her podcast with these two guys, but I do encourage you, watch the whole thing, listen to the whole thing. We'll have the link down in the description below. No, we're not taking her words out of context. You can see exactly for yourself. But she starts off with a question because she wants to pin Ami Kozak on this, and her question starts off a little bit lighter as, until we get every last hostage, is it okay for Israel to just keep blowing things up? And obviously, he comes back with, well, that it's not okay for Israel to give into a negotiation that is bad for them and that will end up with more Jewish lives lost. It's not okay for Israel to capitulate to terrorism. And then she presses him again because obviously she wants him to admit that Israel is just in the wrong for, quote, blowing things up in Gaza and killing tons and tons of innocent Palestinians. And he comes back with the idea that Israel accepting a ceasefire and negotiating with terrorists in a manner that is bad for Israel is just a backward and terrible idea. And instead, he says, why don't we promote the idea that Hamas should just give back the hostages? And then she comes back and doubles down and presses him for a yes or no answer because she comes back and says, but what if they don't? Where do we go then? What if Hamas won't give back the hostages? Because we all know that they're not going to, right? That they won't. Hamas has refused to surrender, has refused to give back the hostages because they kidnapped them in the first place. And so her question is, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to double down on you. I need a yes or no. This is a very simple moral question. Is it okay for Israel to just slaughter 1 million Palestinians? We'll get to that in a second. Under what's going on under the surface here, she wants to force Ami to admit that, number one, Israel is slaughtering just a ton of innocent Palestinians, or at least trying to slaughter, or attempting to slaughter. In her words, is it okay for them to slaughter 1 million Palestinians? And two, it's wrong for Israel to rescue hostages if it means that more innocent Palestinians will die. Now, let's go on because she doubles down. Let's play this clip.
They should give back the hostages unconditionally. Don't we all?
But what if they don't?
Don't agree?
What if they don't?
Then you have to pursue the hostages. What they're doing is.
But what does that mean? What does that actually mean practically? I need to hold you on the answer here because is your perspective that if they don't get back all 250 hostages,
right,
that he has a right to kill every Palestinian?
She says if they don't return the hostages, if they don't get back the hostages, she's like, so what if they don't? Like, what if they don't? If they don't get back all 250 hostages, then does he, meaning Netanyahu, Bibi Netanyahu, have the right to kill every Palestinian? Because a couple of weeks ago, Israel, there was an amazing rescue operation where the IDF rescued 4 Israeli hostages from the heart of Gaza, and they brought them back home. As a result of that, Palestinians, a lot of terrorists were killed, Palestinians were killed, and ostensibly some civilians were killed. Now, civilians were actually holding the hostages captive, so you could argue that were civilians actually civilians if they're holding hostages captive inside their homes. And there were more civilians that were killed in addition to that. But I want to just quickly break down the hostage situation, because Candace Owens is saying it's not okay for Israel to rescue hostages if it means that civilians are going to be killed inside of Gaza. That's not okay at all. Israel should just let their hostages die. That's what she's saying here. Now, Ami Kozak on the show brings up this hostage rescue himself, but I want to say, let's break it down real quick, okay? What happened in this hostage rescue operation? Israel conducted intelligence for weeks. They figured out there's 4 hostages in these 2 buildings, right? An undercover team moves in. They rescue the hostages. And then they easily could have and would have, I'm going to be clear on this, escaped with those hostages without killing any innocent civilians, right? But what happened? As they're rescuing the hostages and pulling them out of the building, all hell breaks loose because the neighborhood realizes that the IDF is there rescuing hostages. They alert Hamas. Hamas swarms in, and then Israel is forced to bring in reinforcements. Dozens of terrorists swarm the streets. The IDF ends up having to fight their way out. They've got to bring in air support. They got to bring in helicopter to rescue the soldiers and the hostages. And as a result, a lot of terrorists and some civilians were killed. Now, again, civilians that were keeping Israeli hostages hostage inside their home, are they actually civilians, including the Al Jazeera journalist who is keeping three of the hostages captive inside his home while reporting for Al Jazeera? Are they actually terrorists? I mean, are they civilians? No, they're not. They're terrorists at that point. But yes, civilians were killed. The other question, but just to throw this in, is that more than 50% of Palestinian Arabs actually support Hamas's actions on October 7th. Actually, 80-something% in Judea and Samaria, what the world calls the West Bank, support Hamas's actions on October 7th. And I believe it's more than 50% in Gaza support Hamas's actions on October 7th. But Candace Owens says, forget about all that. Forget about the idea that it was Hamas's fault. Forget about the idea that civilians were holding hostages inside their homes. Do you think it's okay for Israel to just slaughter 1 million Palestinians in order to bring back the 250 hostages that were taken on October 7th? Now, you and I know, I'm assuming if you're watching this, that you have common sense. If we take this at a common sense level, as the right-wing comedian said to Candace Owens, he said, instead of saying, is it okay or is it worth it for Israel for civilians to be killed as a result of Israel rescuing hostages, let's flip this around. Was it worth it to kidnap hostages, and to kidnap hostages in the first place? Was it really worth it for Hamas to kidnap and slaughter Israelis on October 7th? And as a result, Israel is going to defend themselves? Like common sense says no, absolutely not. But I want to go back to that same video clip, okay? Because Candace Owens just doubles down, because she really wants this guy to admit that Israel just wants to slaughter 1 million Palestinians. Play this clip.
They should be returned unconditionally, and Israel as a government has a responsibility.
I just need to hold you to an answer because I want to understand this.
Unconditionally.
When you say unconditionally,
they took them. They
so
have to
you
give them
mean,
back.
but let's be practical here. If you say we're just going to keep looking for our hostages until we get them back,
right? Okay,
is your perspective that he can quite literally kill every Palestinian if it means that he is able to get hostages? There has to be, we have to actually talk about this practically, because everyone says unconditionally and we say until every last hostage. I'm like, okay, let's really talk about what you're saying here.
So here we see that Candace Owens literally believes that the fault lies with Israel for the current war in Gaza, okay? And that if Hamas won't give the hostages back, then Israel should not try to rescue them because innocent civilians might be killed as a result. And she honestly believes that Israel is trying to slaughter 1 million Palestinians. She references this. She asks him straight up, is it okay for Israel to slaughter all the Palestinians? Is it okay for them to slaughter 1 million Palestinians? And she reiterates that it is wrong for Israel to do this in order to rescue a few hostages. Now, I wish someone would have brought this example up, but I mean, you'd easily take this to an example at home. If your children are kidnapped, if some of your children are murdered, by bad guys, and the rest of them are kidnapped and taken into into the bad guy's home, and the bad guy is there with maybe his family and his friends. Now, who knows whether those are innocent civilians or not, but maybe some of them are. Then what Candace Owens is promoting here is the idea that we should not go and try to get our children back, because we might accidentally kill some civilians in the process. And if we can't get the bad guys to give up the children willingly, then we should just let them sit there. It's not worth it for us to go after the bad guys, to eradicate them and to get our children back, because there might be innocent people killed in the process, even though the bad guys are hiding and kidnapping and holding our children amongst innocent civilians. Okay, that's exactly what she's promoting. Now, over and over again, oh, by the way, like zero talk on this podcast about how the fault lies with Hamas and that Hamas needs to be eradicated. And Dave Smith, by the way, actually seemed to insinuate that Israel should not eradicate Hamas, because he talked about how Bibi Netanyahu has not promised to end the war after the hostages are returned, which is obvious because Israel has vowed to eradicate Hamas, because they need to be, because Hamas has been attacking Israel for the last 20 years. Over and over again, Candace Owens and Dave Smith talked about how Israel just needed to stop the war. They just need to stop the war, stop the killing. And if you don't, if an innocent child, a Palestinian child being murdered does not bother you, then you're a monster, according to Candace Owens. And they talked a lot about how October 7th was really Israel's fault, that, there's documents now proving Israel knew that Hamas was going to kidnap hundreds of Israelis weeks before the attack happened. And by the way, it's probably not going to happen again, right? And so if Israel stop the war today, what are they really worried about? That Hamas is going to try and attack them again? Yes, because that's what they've done for 20 years with multiple wars and tens of thousands of rockets over and over and over and over again. I want to look at another show from Candace's new channel, and we're just going to briefly look at this. But the reason I'm bringing this one up is just to show you the lies and the propaganda being promoted in this show. So this one's called, it's Candace episode 5. It's called Another Person Fired for Criticizing Israel. I'll just open with this clip, okay? Just watch this.
All right, guys, happy Friday. Nothing too controversial today. Just one question. Is America a sovereign nation, or are we being controlled by Israel? I know that question someday is probably going to get me arrested. I know this anti-Semitism bill is making its way through Congress. And I don't know if we're going to be able to have free speech anymore. So let me get it all out while there's still time.
So Candace is obviously just joking about how she's probably going to go to prison for criticizing Israel. And, another person is fired because they dared to criticize Israel. And, while she can still have freedom of speech, she's going to keep asking questions, just asking questions here, right? But then I do want to bring this up. She goes on a rant about AIPAC, which is the supposed to be like the Jewish pro-Israel organization in America. They're pretty liberal, actually. I don't agree with a lot of their views. But she has a problem with them operating in America at all, because she claims they're a foreign organization lobbying on behalf of another country. AIPAC is an American Jewish organization, they are pro-Israel. That's basically who they are. Again, I don't agree with everything with AIPAC. They're very liberal. But then she makes this crazy statement regarding whether or not AIPAC should register as a foreign lobbying organization. Watch this video.
We know that there was once a president who wanted to make AIPAC register as foreign, and he ended up shot. Coincidentally, ended up shot.
And then she just throws it out there, guys, that the last U.S. president that tried to make AIPAC register as a foreign lobbying organization found himself assassinated. Not saying anything here, guys, but she seems to be insinuating that the Jewish pro-Israel organization in America was responsible for killing a U.S. president, okay? Let's just leave that one right there. But this video, she interviews someone named Brianna Joy Gray, who was fired from her position as an anchor on a news outlet on the Hill when she was interviewing a sister of one of the hostages in Gaza. Now, you may have seen this clip on social media, but at the very end of her interview, which you could tell she was not happy about, and she actually told Candace Owens afterwards, she really didn't want to do this interview because she just thought it would be another political statement from, a family member of one of the hostages in Gaza. But at the end of the clip, which you can see on the show, she said, the sister finished the interview and she said she hoped Brianna would believe her and all women when they say that they were hurt. And instead of listening or saying thank you for your time or sympathizing or anything, she rolled her eyes and then she said, we have to go, and cut her off. Like, obviously antagonistic. Obviously, like, this is a sister of one of the hostages inside Gaza, and she just rolls her eyes at her and cuts her off and say, we don't have any more time, after pushing back on her positions, and then she was fired. Now, you can decide for yourself whether that was justified. Again, I'll let you watch the clip down below. But this particular interview, she comes on to Candace Owens' show. Now, that Brianna Joy Gray is a liberal, and Candace Owens promotes herself as a conservative, right? But she brings the Brianna Joy Gray on to talk about being fired from her position. Now, I'm not going to talk about most of the interview, but in the second half, Brianna really comes out with her true colors by promoting some just really awful things about Israel. And Candace Owens just sat there and nodded and kind of smiled along to it. And we don't have a time to play all the clips, but again, watch it for yourself. And I'll just highlight a few of them. Now, first of all, Candace talked about how the hostage's sister was just utilizing her sister's victimhood to advance a political ideology. And she actually said she couldn't think of anything grosser than using her sister's victimhood to promote a political ideology. Now, what do you think the sister was on the show promoting? The fact that her sister is a hostage with Hamas in Gaza? Do you think? And you know, the idea that maybe, you know, like, she's like, what is her goal? What is her ideology other than the fact that she wants to see her sister come home? And I think it's kind of disgusting for Candace Owens to talk about how, you know, that, you know, her coming on Brianna's show to talk about how women were hurt on October 7th is just gross to her. So Candace Owens has done this several times recently, but her and Brianna also talked about the idea of Jewish supremacy, which is just a really horrific blood libel, which is pushing a false narrative that Jews think they're a superior race, which is just awful. And, you know, that's just a blood libel from the past, you know, over the past several thousand years that we've heard just resurfacing again, which just leads to anti-Semitism, which, you know, it leads to horrific acts against the Jewish people. Again, Jews are being beaten up in the streets of America right now. This is not a conspiracy. Brianna went on to talk about how Israel was an apartheid state. She referenced there's different rights for Jews and Arabs. There's superior rights for Jews over areas. There's roads that Jews are allowed on, roads that are Arabs are not allowed on, and Arabs have to wait for hours. The ones that, you know, at checkpoints to go into Israel to work, which, by the way, Israel, before October 7th, Israel allowed over 100,000 Arabs from Judea and Samaria and Gaza to work inside Israel with work permits, giving them a good livelihood. But instead, Brianna's turning that into, oh, they have to wait at checkpoints every day. That's because they don't live in Israel and they're not Israeli citizens. But Israel graciously gives them work permits to work inside Israel to feed their families. And at the end, Brianna just brought up this horrific, she was just like, now there's new reporting about a torture camp in Israel where Palestinians are having metal electric rods. I can't even finish it. It's so graphic. You can watch it for yourself, shoved inside their bodies and electrocuted as a kind of torture. She's like propagating just awful lies that are obviously not true, just about as true as the lie circulating Twitter right now that Israeli dogs or IDF dogs are raping Palestinians. Like, just, I mean, who even comes up with this stuff? And Candace Owens just sitting there listening to her, you know? And then she immediately transitioned from the torture camp to throwing doubt on the rapes that happened on October 7th, saying the story is now riddled with holes, even saying talking about the lie that Joe Biden promulgated about the 40 beheaded babies, completely downplaying October 7th, saying, oh, rape didn't happen, babies weren't beheaded. Yeah, it did. People were beheaded on October 7th. That is 100% true. And just going from saying Israel has a torture camp where they're committing horrific, heinous acts against Palestinians right now to, oh, and by the way, there weren't rapes on October 7th. Babies weren't beheaded. It wasn't as bad as we thought, kind of thing. Like, what have we come to? What kind of blood libels are we promoting right now? And why is Candace Owens just sitting and nodding along to this? And even promoting her own things like Jewish supremacy, another blood libel. So Brianna Joy Gray, just to finish this out, she was like, she brought up the fact that adjectives to describe the atrocities that Hamas committed against Israel on October 7th are much more frequently used about Hamas committing atrocities against Israel and the Jewish people than they are about Israel committing atrocities against the Palestinian people. And I say that to tell you that she's trying to put Israel and the Palestinians on an equal scale, trying to put Israel and Hamas on an equal scale. And that's what all these people are doing, except now it's starting to tip the other way, because Candace Owens is not putting them on an equal scale. She's putting Hamas higher than Israel, and she's making Israel solely responsible. She's advancing an agenda of putting Israel and Hamas not on this equal footing when they shouldn't be at all, because Israel is a moral democratic state that values life above everything else. Hamas is a terrorist murdering regime that doesn't care anything about the Palestinians. They don't care anything about the Jews, except they want to slaughter them all. Instead, Candace Owens is tipping it the other way and putting all of the entirety of the responsibility on Israel. So this begs the question again as we round out today's show. When is rhetoric like this and propaganda like this counted as Jew hatred? And when is it just plain ignorance? Now, it's fine to criticize Israel. Nobody has a problem with that. We live in a democratic world for the most part, right? I'm an American. You're probably an American watching this, or you're probably in a Western country. You can criticize Israel. You don't have to like their government. You don't have to like their leaders. You don't have to like their policies, how they run their country. You don't have to like anything Israel does. It's a free world. Criticize them all you want. This is when it crosses over into anti-Semitism, however. When you tout the fact that it is wrong for Israel to be stronger than their enemies, it is wrong for Israel to defend themselves and to actually win a defensive war against Hamas that Hamas started themselves when Hamas came into your sovereign territory and slaughtered your civilians, kidnapped hundreds of people, and it is wrong for you to go back in and take the enemy out just because civilians are dying, which is a horrific product of war. It's horrific that people are dying, but it's the whole war in itself is horrific. And when you promote the idea that Israel doesn't really, now Candace Owens has not said this specifically, but she's really touting this idea. And like, I was kind of shocked when the interview with the two Jewish comedians, I was kind of shocked by how much time they spent talking about how Israel really just stole the land from the Palestinians in 1948. Candace Owens doesn't even know the date, by the way. She kept saying 1945. But how Israel stole the land in the first place. She's not even promoting like a two-state solution or a Palestinian state. She's promoting the idea that like Israel should not be existing in the land of Israel at all. And that's really what's bothering me. When you promote the idea that Israel's existence in their homeland is in question and that the Jewish people don't have a right to live in Judea, the Jewish people in Judea, like that's when it's crossing over into anti-Semitism. When you say that Israel does not have the right to use their first world, Western democratic, strong Jewish army to defend themselves because now as a result of Hamas's attack on October 7th, innocent Palestinians are being killed. That's 100%. All of these things, questioning Israel's right to defend themselves, questioning their existence to live in their homeland, questioning their right to be stronger than their enemies, that's 100% anti-Semitism. Now, I think it is a little bit of a mixture of ignorance on Candace Owens' part, but it's also Jew hatred. And kudos to her for allowing a member of the pro-Israel side on her show. I hope she continues to allow more people like this. She says she wants to, and I hope she learns more of the truth and that she doesn't continue in her ignorance and anti-Semitism. Guys, don't forget we're giving away a really great merch package at the end of the month of June. That's coming up really soon. All you have to do to enter the raffle is join our email list completely free. The link's in the description below. And don't forget to get your copy of 75 Hebrew words you need to understand the Bible. Link also in the description below. Guys, make sure you subscribe and let me know what you think about in the comment section. As always, tune out the fake news and tune into what is actually happening here. We're here every Monday through Friday with your direct connection to the land and people of Israel.